there's an emphasis on new product development, and specifically on the African continent, where it's very relevant. The question is, what comes first? The need, identifying a need for something, or the idea?
They actually are symbiotic, really. It works both ways. Sometimes we identify a need and we design a solution for that need, and then it takes inventive steps through a design process to fulfill that.
Right.
And the other way around, an invention comes along and has to be commercialized. And in the introduction, you left out the designer, because between the inventor and commercialization, you have a designer.
Which is yourself.
And that's my job.
Yeah.
And I happen to have to be an inventor as well by co-inventing the solution through a design process. So it's a very broad spectrum and deep syndrome of what has to be done to take an invention from someone's precious idea. And most people, funny enough, have a precious idea. You'd be surprised how many budding inventors there are around.
Sure.
But certainly about 30% of our work in the last 30 years has been with individual inventors taking something from nothing to something successfully, commercially successful product.
What's the most exciting idea that's ever come across your table?
It's a very interesting question, that, because there's so many. To pinpoint them out would be like pinpointing out your best child that you ever had, if you had a whole bunch of children. And we only
okay, but highlight a few. Pick two.
There's certainly, I think the brush tea is definitely one of the most interesting and exciting and commercially successful. This was by a young inventor, Jason Krause. He was young at the time. He's getting on a bit now as well, because the years passed. But over the years, I think it's been 7 or so odd years, this has become commercially very successful. And who would have thought a toothbrush acting as a golf tee would become a globally influential product? This is the biggest non-wooden or non-conventional tea in the world at the moment. I think they've surpassed 30 million of production pieces. So that, you could say, is a deep commercial success.
Right.
But that was the one. The ones I like to remember also the gym trims, working with Willy van Straten, who's the father of invention in this country. We worked on the early gym trims, and we have worked, those were also memorable inventions that actually Willy, as a marketing researcher, identified the need for exercise home gyms. And there's that situation where he came with the need, and we fulfilled it through a design process. So that's identifying a problem without, so it gets born through various avenues, the invention process.
So it's good to see the likes of the SABS encouraging young designers within the country. But is that enough?
Not enough at all.
What can be done?
If you look at Korea and Taiwan and those Asian giants, their governments injected billions and billions of dollars of capital 2 to 3 decades ago, and look what we have. I don't think I'm allowed to mention brand names on the television, but think of any great Korean brand name, from their cars to their appliances. They are taken over the world, and that's through design. It's not that they got a great other pit of gold like we had here. So quite frankly, you know, that's got to be considered. And I do feel in this country, sadly, there's almost zero government support. I think Adrienne does a fantastic job on the limited budgets that she gets from the government, but it's about not even 1% of what's required if we're going to save Africa, let alone South Africa. And we can save Africa through design process, and that sounds like a broad statement.
Cash injection, though.
Cash injection and interest from the government and understanding. Design has always been the surreptitious brother that always gets lost in the background, just like, you know, design is never really understood. A lot of my big corporate South African clients, and again I can't mention names, I don't think on air, and I respect some of them immensely for their sort of investment in design in the longer term. But a lot of the budgets we work on are stolen from the advertising department, which is ridiculous. So there's not even a budget allocated for research and development in a lot of companies, South Africa and globally. So it's a very misunderstood strategic business weapon, which when utilized, like the likes of the famous computer companies in the world, you see the results, and they take over the world with a product. The results of paying attention and utilizing design as a business strategy is enormous.
Are we seeing a lot of local designers moving abroad then, because there's more opportunities?
Yes, I think that's always been the case, as with most professions in this country. I've got the best of both worlds. I have an office in Germany and here, and we operate up and down, and I've worked, about 60% of my work has been offshore over the years. But there are a lot of guys moving over there, but the grass is not greener there. There's a very saturated market there. But as far as industrial designers go, which what we do specifically, there's just a handful of people, relatively speaking, in the world. It's a very unknown quantity, and not many guys. In fact, a few years after qualifying, 3 years after qualifying, I was the only guy still in the profession that we trained for out of 8 guys who qualified. And it's pretty much like that today. But it is becoming, the great designer Philippe Starck in France has said the war on design has been won, meaning that an everyday lay person will understand the meaning of design and in their daily lives, and know about it. I think we've got about 2 decades to go in South Africa, but we are slowly getting there.
But we're getting there, and it's exciting stuff, isn't it?
We've got a great inventive spirit, and I think
over the continent, right?
Yes, very much so. I think we have a cheerful attitude, which is actually, funny enough, linked to creative process. Having a cheerful attitude, not sucking lemons on a subway on the way to work.
Right.
The sunshine does quite a lot here around here, although it comes at a high price.